Need a pen so I can write this down. Guess I'll just have to make one. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Glad you're here. Today I'm going to be turning a pen on the lathe, and I'm going to be making the pen blank out of this bourbon barrel stave. This is part of the bourbon barrel that I've cut up. It's charred white oak. That's how they're made. And white oak and oak in general is a really tight grained wood, so it's going to work really well for this. And it's going to be kind of neat just because it's going to be made out of a bourbon barrel. So let's get started and see how we're going to do this and see how it turns out. The first thing we need to do is cut this down to about roughly 3/4 inches by 3/4 inches. It can be a little smaller. The type of pen that I'm making doesn't require a really large blank, but I want enough that I can work it down to what I need. I don't want to make it too small. So, and this is curved right here, as is this and everything else. So it's kind of tricky to do on the table saw, but it can be done. Just always, just be careful when you're doing stuff. So I've ripped this on the table saw to get it down to a little bit smaller section. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the length out of it. What that's going to do is it's not going to have quite as much of a curve in it when I go to cut it on the table saw and trim it down to make it more square. As a short section, as you can kind of see, doesn't have near as much curve and bow in it as the whole piece does. It's going to make it easier when it's riding on the fence or the table saw. Now that we've got this piece squared up, next thing I'm going to do is get the barrels out of the pen kit. These are what the blank goes around. The blank goes over this. There's going to be holes drilled in this. The blank is going to go inside of it and be glued into place. And then it's hollow because it's going to hold the workings of the pen with the ink and the refills and transmission and all the other things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this up here. And I'm going to leave a little bit of slop on this side and on this side. Just going to make a mark a little bit longer than the barrel itself. This will be sanded down. We'll get to that point later, and I'll show you how that's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut both of these barrels are the same size. So I'm going to cut two identical sizes of wood out of this blank, and then come back and mark the centers of each piece, and go on and drill a hole in them and get them ready to get the barrels glued in. All right. So now that we have our two pieces, I'm going to take this center finder jig, make a mark, turn this 90 degrees, make another mark. And that gives me the center point of my blank. I'm going to do the same thing to this one, and then I'm going to drill a 7mm hole. These are 7mm diameter, so I'm going to drill a 7mm hole here, and then this will be glued into place in here all the way down. Now that we have our holes drilled, we're going to take both barrels, and I'm going to take some 80 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to scuff them up in all directions, up and down, sideways, a little diagonal, everything else. What that's going to do is going to give something for the super glue to hold on to really make sure that they bind well and stick well inside the blank. So now here they are scuffed up. The glue's going to hold a lot better now. What I like to do is just use a little cheap screwdriver. I think I got a whole set of these at a dollar store somewhere. They're nice for little projects and stuff. If you tear something up, it doesn't matter. You can just throw them away. I'm going to use a medium CA glue. And just put a light coating over the whole thing. Just on the outside here, when it gets put in the hole of the blank, it's going to bond to all the surfaces. It's going to make a really good bond. As you can see, I'm using this screwdriver because that way I can get all the glue on everything without having to hold the blank and getting glue all over my fingers. That's not cool. I'm sure I'll get super glue on me at some point, but I'm going to try to avoid it if at all possible. Now that the glue's on, put the blank in. I like to keep a paper towel, piece of toilet paper, something around just to wipe off any excess that comes off. And you want to make sure you can see, make sure it's in there past the point of the wood on both sides. And like I said, this is going to be sanded down before we put it on the lathe and turn it, but that way we know we have more than enough. And then set that aside, do the other one the exact same way, and give it about 10 minutes before start turning anything. Really let the glue get down in there, let it set and dry down inside the blank before you try to start turning it, because you don't want anything coming loose and messing your whole project up. So the next thing I'm going to do after the glue's had time to set is I'm going to sand these down just to the tip of the barrel, just until the sander just hits the barrel and starts hitting into the metal. I don't want to sand it too much further than that. On both sides of both blanks, sand it down just until it reaches the metal, and then we'll be able to mount it on the lathe and turn it. Alright, now once that's done, we can mount it on the mandrel. I'm going to start out with 2 bushings, one of the blanks, 1 bushing, the other blank, and then 2 more bushings. That's going to give me room on either side here to be able to turn it down and not hit any of this or hit anything else. Slide this in place, lock it down. Everything's secure. Put on protection and get ready to turn it. So now what I've done is I've got it turned down almost to the bushing. I left a little bit of space here because what I want to do is take this 80 grit sandpaper and I want to be able to sand my taper. It's going to taper down into the bushing, and this part's going to stay a little bit thicker. It's going to taper down on both sides, and I want to be able. This is going to give me a little more precision as far as being able to work the taper down just to the bushing. It's going to make the pen fit better. It's going to give it a better look and everything else. Alright, so now this is just about ready for the clear coat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more kind of a little detail to it. That's an old turner's trick. I've seen a lot of people do it. I've used it myself a few times. It's pretty neat. Take a piece of wire, I'm going to turn the lathe on. I'm going to hold the wire on here, and it's going to score and burn a small line, and it's going to give it a little more detail. I'm probably going to keep it simple, maybe just one or two on each one. Just something to give it a little more flair, give it something else to look at. So let's do that. That's going to show up a lot more once I put the finish on, which is what I'm getting ready to do now. Before I do that, I'm going to take this, I think it's just called art tape. It's basically just like a thin roll of electric tape. And I'm going to put it right next to here, 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 and here. What it's going to do is going to kind of mask this off, so when I put the super glue finish on here, I have less chance of it actually attaching to this over here and getting stuck on anything when I go to take it off. Alright, so now for the assembly. First thing we're going to do is we're going to press the nib into one end of one of the blanks. I'm using a vise that has wooden blocks on it. What this is going to allow me to do is be able to press this in without having any issues of smashing anything with being metal on metal and smashing it. I don't want to tear anything up. So I'm just going to press this in. Try to keep everything flat and straight as possible. The next thing to do is going to be to take the transmission. This is the part that turns back and forth and allows the pin to come in and out, open and close. This is going to be pressed in. I'm going to start by going just past the brass part, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the insert in and then actually kind of test it to see how far in and out the tip of the pin comes, and I can get that adjusted as I need it. But I want to start out less than I think I need and work my way in, because I can't pull this back out, or I probably could, but I don't know how well it'd work after that. You can see there that's not quite enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the insert back out. I'm going to keep pressing it in until I get this to a point that I like it. So there we go, that's not bad. It's with it fully open, and then I can test it. It goes in, it's not exposed at that point. Comes back out, has a good tip on it. So now we'll move on to putting the rest of it together. The next step is going to be to line up this clip and this cap onto your other blank, and then the two pieces are going to go together here in just a minute, and this is going to get pressed into place. Now that piece is put together. Now for the final assembly, just a matter of taking this ring here, sliding it down over the transmission. This is going to be a spacer between the two pieces. Slide this into place. And with that, your pen is complete. You can turn it to bring it out to be able to write with it. Twist it back to close it. Has a really nice sleek look to it, nice finish. The gold really looks nice. I have silver pen kits as well. I think either one would look good with something like this. It's just a kind of a classic clean look that you could really go with any color on. Is it perfect? No. Is it handmade? Definitely. I'm sure I have a lot to learn. This is only the third pen I've ever made, so you know there's some little nuances and discrepancies here and there, but overall, I like it. It's neat, it's fun to do, it's a neat little project, and I think it turned out really nice. And with that, that's going to be another one. Thank you all for stopping by. If you like the content here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And when you subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified of upcoming videos. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you all. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hang on, wait. What is it? Today I'm going to make a pen using a bourbon, using a, what? What? I can't swim. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm going to make a pen. What did I just get? Did I just get stuff all on my head? What is going on? Well, got all the bloopers out of the way in about the first minute.